Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Stacy. So good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to our January 11th, 2021 council meeting. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Stay when you're ready if you want to call the roll.
Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor.
Councilwoman O'Connor, Council at Large here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky. I see you, Bridget. Councilman William X. Conlon.
Councilman Conlon, second district, present.
Councilwoman Elizabeth Johnston.
Councilperson Liz Johnston, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton, 5th District, present.
Councilman Peter Mazzaro.
Councilman Peter Massaro, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee, 7th District, present.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli, 8th District, present.
Councilman Robert Bruno.
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen, 10th District, present.
And Chairman Ronald Quagliani.
Councilman Ron Quagliani, present.
Okay, all present.
Thank you, Stacy. Before we enter into public session, just like to take a minute for a moment of silence. We've had 2 West Haven former public servants that passed since our last meeting. The first one is Theodore Francois, was a West Haven police officer, supernumerary status over 60 years ago, passed this past week. And also Lou Spaldi, longtime City of West Haven public works employee and building maintenance supervisor, also passed this past week. If we could just have a moment for them, please. Thank you. We will enter into public comment. Stacy, is there any public comment for this evening?
Yes, we have one letter from Robin Parsons, 129 Bellevue Avenue. Good evening and Happy New Year, members of the council, Mayor Rossi, and all in attendance. I haven't ever been so proud to be a resident of West Haven as I was following the adoption of the city's resolution to declare racism a public health crisis at the last city council meeting. I was impressed and deeply moved by the work done by the Community Alliance. The resolution they crafted made it clear why beauty is so often directly connected to justice and truth. It's a beautiful statement of both the value and obligations of the community. As a citizen, I am deeply grateful for their work. I am also very gratified that all of our council members voted to support this resolution. Additionally, I especially appreciated Attorney Tiernan's remarks clarifying that the purpose of such a resolution is to acknowledge the existence of an unacceptable condition and to commit to working towards ending it. And Chairman Quagliani's comments about the need to be open to what we don't know as individuals, no less than elected officials. We are lucky to have these individuals on the West Haven team. While this isn't the time for revisiting the Sustainable Connecticut initiative, I do want to remind the council that West Haven still has available the resources of Sustainable Connecticut for help in addressing some of the issues in the resolution identifies. Sustainable Connecticut makes available to registered communities equity coaches whose job it is to assist cities and towns in furthering equity in every area of a community's life. Their help is free. I've attached a copy of the Sustainable Connecticut's Equity Toolkit for reference. And that's all the public comment we have this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stacy. We'll now enter into our regular council meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of December the 28th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Councilwoman Hamilton, Councilman Bruno, Councilwoman O'Connor. Is there a second? Second, Councilman Cohen, Conlon, Donovan. Any discussion on those minutes? Councilman Massaro.
Yes, on page 4, I told Stacy already, but on page 4, where it says that Councilman Massaro's chairwoman, we change that back to my gender, chairman.
So noted, Councilman Massaro. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? And the minutes pass unanimously. If I could have the clerk pass out tonight's communication.
We only have one communication this evening, Mr. Chairman. It's communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of December 2020, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you, Stacy. We'll recess into committee meetings. We have tonight the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky, to do a 5-month update on the finances for the city of West Haven from July 1, 2020. Councilwoman Hosky.
Thank you, Chairman. So Frank, I really do appreciate you being here this evening and giving us an update. I did receive, as did I believe the rest of the council, your answer to the numerous questions that we had for you. I'm not sure if anybody else has any follow-up questions, but I myself did have a couple of questions just to clarify. So I would like to open things up to the entire council as a whole. And if you could just limit your questions to 2 at a time, which will give us an opportunity. I know I received, a lot of similar questions from council members. So if you do have any follow-up questions, if we could just limit it to 2 at a time. I'm going to start off. Just one thing I wanted to ask you about, Frank. Hold on, I'm looking at my questions. Hold on, I lost myself. Okay, I remember. So can you, I don't understand the election expenses. I thought, and I could be wrong, and I know you said that we could ask department heads and what have you, but I'll do that if you don't have the answer. I don't understand how we can go through an entire election cycle and no monies be charged to the registrar's office for temporary payroll. I don't understand that.
We would only charge expenses to where we are actually told to charge them. So we don't actually get the bills from the departments and then make our own decision where to charge things. We're being told where to apply these costs. I think I lost you.
No, I'm just thinking in my head before I speak.
Oh no, my screen froze, so I thought I was reading.
And I appreciate that. Like I really, really do. So what is temporary payroll in the registrar's office? And maybe you are the wrong person to ask this. I mean, you really may be. And I'm not saying, you know, I just don't understand how we went through in a primary, in an entire election, and all the monies came out of the clerk's office as if I thought temporary hires you know, when they say, hey, do you know anybody, you know, the registrar is looking to hire people. I thought it was them. So it's not the registrar's office, it's actually the clerk's.
It would be whoever, yeah, again, it would be whoever sent us the bill and decided that's where it gets charged to.
So can I ask another question? And you probably are not the person. Who approves us spending almost $2,500 on lunch on election day?
Whoever signed the voucher. I would imagine it would come from whatever department that it got charged to. So if it's in the clerk's office, it would have been signed by the city clerk.
That's just so interesting to me. I have one more. The encumbrances. Can you explain that to me again? The maintenance service.
Anytime a purchase order is created, it's encumbered. It shows as an encumbrance.
Right.
So if bills are paid, if a purchase order is created and bills are paid on a voucher and not through the purchase order, that encumbrance will never clear.
Right. But we're $39,000 negative already 5 months into the fiscal year. It's overdrawn. How did that happen? Like, what is that item that they purchased that caused them to be $39,000 in the hole and out of money for the rest of the year?
So I don't see Frank on the screen there, Councilwoman Hosky.
Did I lose him?
Think we may have.
I think we might have lost him.
She's coming back.
I'm sorry, I lost the feed there. Was there a question after that?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the, I'm still with us. I was trying to look at, I can't be on Zoom and look at the budget. So my question was, did you hear me ask about the encumbrances? I get about it being invoiced. I know how that works. My question is why 5 months in is maintenance service negative $39,000. They've gone through their entire budget. I'm just curious as to what was invoiced that had that happen. Was it unexpected? You know, what is the reason for $39,000?
No, and as I said in the responses was, without an IT manager to oversee this, I think bills are just getting paid wherever people think they should get paid. So they could very well have gotten charged to the IT budget and not belonged there.
Okay, and that falls under, I appreciate that. So that falls under the IT manager to ensure that things are being uploaded in Munis correctly, because it all goes through Munis, correct?
Well, it would be up to the IT manager normally to process those bills against his department.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying.
Right, so somebody could have gotten a bill, just assumed that it belonged in IT and charged it there, when Dave probably normally would have billed it to a piece to IT, maybe a piece to the police, a piece to whomever.
Okay. You're right. Your answer does say that, but I just needed, I guess, a little bit, like I didn't get what that was stating. Got it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Frank. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions before I continue? Councilwoman Hamilton.
Hi, Frank. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
I have a simple question. Telephone administration. I noticed that only 5% of that budget has been used. First of all, what is telephone administration? I think I need to start there.
I think that's where the bills for the network connections and everything else gets processed against.
And is 5%, is that a realistic percent for this time of year?
No. I would imagine that there are bills sitting out there somewhere that have not been paid, because I looked at it, and Comcast has not been paid in the first few months of the year. So I would imagine that those bills are sitting someplace. Normally that would have been handled by Dave.
So when you said that they're sitting out there, like, do we know where so we can get them paid so they're not like late charges and stuff?
Yeah, they may be in the stack that people keep dropping in my office. It seems like every time I leave my office, there's new papers that appear on my desk. So I'll go through all of those this week to see if I can figure out any of those bills, and if any of them are related to, and any bills that I've got, we'll make sure that we get those processed through.
Okay. Also, the city clerk's office. Last year in 2020, we had a drop of revenue. Do you think that's in the last 4 months? Would that be because of COVID, or what are your thoughts on that?
At the end of 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot of that is probably COVID. Those are normally licenses and that kind of stuff. So as people have had difficulty getting in to do what they need with City Hall because of the restrictions and the virus and everything, I would imagine that is what you're seeing. We're seeing a similar situation in the building department, where we had a drop off at the end of the year for permits, and now they're trying to push through the backlog to try to get those issued.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask another question. I know it's 3, but it's part of city clerk, so I'm counting it as my second question. Anyways, so from 2018 to today, in the city clerk's office, it looks like $127,000 increase from prior years. What do we contribute that to?
That would be any revenues that were brought up by the clerk's office, get coded as coming in from the city clerk. The line item that it reflects on is, if I can find it here. Most of those are reported as building license, plumbing. Bear with me. Recording legal instrument fees. It's on page 3 of the package that got sent out last week. And I don't have any detail behind that. We would have to either get the records from the clerk to see exactly which licenses are being classified as that.
Okay, because I mean, that's a good thing. It's a good, I'm not complaining, but it just seemed like a lot, almost $130,000 more.
Yeah, and to your point though, in fiscal 20, there was a reduction from 19. So some of that could be activity that didn't happen in 20, but is happening in 21.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Chairwoman.
You're welcome.
So Frank, I just want to ask a clarifying question because I think Robin brings up a really good point. So we are seeing some peaks and valleys, right? I guess with the clerk's office. But so when you were saying 2018 to last year, 2019, I maybe just confused myself. So 2020, you think might have been impacted in regards to COVID. And then when we had the spike to go down again, did you thought that things got carried over, or there was, can you just explain what you said again at the last part of it? I'm sorry,
So fiscal 20, you see a reduction in the revenues coming in from the clerk's office from 19. Some of that could be COVID related, as people put off events, marriages, whatever. And 21, you're seeing a large increase. That could be that after June, right? Because this is fiscal years, not calendar years. So after June, people were starting to go back out again. Things were starting to open up again. Halls were starting to rent out again for events, small events. So what you're seeing there is it could be what got delayed from fiscal 20 got pushed into fiscal 21.
I completely understand. And can you remind me, because I think I've mentioned it a few times, did we raised fees too as well? Not that I think fees, there'd be $100,000 improvement, but from 20 to 21, did our fees went up a little bit or it didn't? Was it other departments we did that? I don't remember, and I'm just curious.
I think it was mostly the building department where the fees went up.
Okay, right. Okay. No, I knew it was somewhere. I wasn't sure if it was the clerk's office. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? Councilman Bruno?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir.
Frank, with the COVID still in full swing, are you at all concerned about the revenue? For the record, I was just worrying about, wondering what your take on that was.
Yeah, I think we haven't really seen a drop in the tax revenues coming in. Even in January, I was speaking to Leslie last week. We should see a fairly, I won't say strong, but a good January collection. As I had mentioned to the MARB, if I had any concerns, it would probably be with the second half of the year, as people are now, kind of 9 months into this. If they have problems making their mortgage payments, then that's going to be reflected with the escrow accounts that would normally come in. Those normally come in at the end of January. The banks will wait till the end of the grace period before typically sending those funds over. So we'll know better as we get towards the end of the month where we're going to land with that.
Okay, so you answered my second question about tax collection. So you're okay with that right now, as far as you think we're okay, as far as where we were?
I think so. I think so. What I'm projecting is, if you were to look at page 2 and 3 of the package that came out last week, you'll see the individual line items of revenue there. In the forecast column, the projected fiscal 21, what I normally do for that is each individual line, I'll bounce it up against an algorithm that looks at the last 3 years of timing. And it says, for instance, building permits, I'm projecting a reduction to the budget based on where we are now at the end of 5 months, and using the last 3 years, saying that we should have been at 40, 45%, but we're really only at 42%. So, reduce the annual number for that particular line item. By doing it line item by line item, it eliminates the blending that you might see on an overall basis, because the state funding the ECS and all of those in category 45, state grants, etc. Those won't see a change. Typically, once the state approves those monies, we'll see that come in. So I typically hold those against what the budget was. If anything, you'll see that the federal miscellaneous grants, we actually got in more so far than the total budget. So the projection will change going forward. As that number increases, we won't hold the budget. We'll add it to the new number.
Okay. Okay. With that being said, Frank, thank you very much. With that being said, do you see potentially a cash flow problem moving forward?
I don't think so. Typically in January is where we'll get the big influx from the tax revenue. The remainder or another big portion of the ECS money comes in January. So, I talked to Bob Z last week, and our feeling is if we can get through to the end of the month without a problem, we should be okay. And I don't foresee any huge payments coming in. Where the biggest ones that we've seen are the monthly bills related to Gilbane and the high school project.
Okay, so you're saying if we can get through the rest of the month, you feel we should be okay?
We should be okay.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else,
You're-
Madam Chair.
you're
Thank you.
Councilman Cohen? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank, thanks so much for this. I really appreciate your responses that Councilwoman, that Madam Chair Hosky put together and sent to you. I have a clarifying question just for myself, because many of the questions that I had to your point, I really do need to follow up with the individual department heads, and I appreciate that. But just to get my head straight on building permits, you were kind enough to give us fiscal year numbers for 18, 19, 20, and 21. Maybe it's a stupid question, but fiscal year 21, is that your projection of 542,494?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's the projection for that. And if I can just have a part B to my question here, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm just thinking out loud. Fiscal year 2019, the reason why there was such a spike, was that part of the havens, or would that be correct? I'm just trying to remember.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe
knew
so.
there was a spike. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to say it's an outlier, but it's understood why that was so much higher. So if you basically took the other, well, the projection for 21, if you will, with just say 18 and 20, just because it's the outlier just for a moment, so we're going to be, and probably rightly so, and I assume it's because of, well, whatever, one of the reasons could be COVID, is that we're going to be I guess anywhere from, looking at how you look at it, anywhere from $30,000 to $45,000 short from a typical year. So it seems, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yes.
For certain projection. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that. And Madam Chair, I just have one other question, if I may.
And
Yeah. Go ahead.
before you move on from that, I will codify that with, these projections are based on the current numbers as of 5 months and the timing. If the building department is able to push through the permits that they're working on, that could very well tip us into a neutral or favorable position if they are able to get caught up and get all the backlog pushed through.
Yeah, because I figured that you took the 5 month and then you extrapolated, as you just explained, to come to that projection of 542.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, all right. So that was my other. I have other questions, but for my second question, oh goodness me, I guess it's just to make sure that I'm understanding it on the first page, the overtime payroll. And again, I did not have a chance to study the additional sheets that you put at the end of this for us in terms of the overtime for the departments and so forth. But just generally speaking, it seemed to me that when we did this year's budget that we're on right now, that we added a few positions and that there was a few, what I would say, open positions that were to be filled or not filled. And I believe that perhaps some of them haven't gotten filled yet. So Would it be fair to say that the overtime, obviously there was more overtime for some departments than others due to varying reasons, which I need to look at closer, but I guess it was the good news is, and tell me if I'm wrong enough, the good news is we didn't fill the positions. The bad news is we didn't fill the positions, which means that we're working our people overtime too, so we don't go over budget. Is
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
When we do the projection, the model looks at the individual months.
Right.
It takes some within the quarter. They're not all 4 weeks, right? It's a 13-week quarter. So one of those months is a 5-week month, and the other 2 are 4-week months. So what we do is for any of the months that have not closed yet, we'll take the annual value of the budget, which is fully loaded, and calculate what the remaining months should be, if they filled all those positions that day. So there's on the last page of what I sent today, you'll see by department favorability in the overall wage line. And to your point, right? So the wages are favorable, but the overtime is up.
Right. And so with that, and I don't want to belabor this because, as I said, I haven't studied that last sheet, but 2 things come to mind is, once again, we're able to cover our overtime because of what you've just explained. But also, as I recollect, and tell me if I'm wrong, Frank, when we had our budget collaborations, deliberations, if you will, we were coming up with stuff, I think that we used about $26,000 annual health benefit costs. Now, obviously, some of these jobs and so forth weren't full-time, part-time. So above and beyond, would it be fair to say, above and beyond, I hate to use this word, savings, if you will, that we're able to put towards overtime, we probably also might have saved some other costs on healthcare because, unfortunately, let's say we didn't fill position A, and that was, let's say, I don't know, it was a full-time position, and they didn't fill it for 6 months, so it would be like $13,000 of healthcare savings. Would that be a logical, above and beyond this budget line, there's the healthcare savings as well?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay,
when we add a position in the budget, well, not add a position, but when we put an open position in the budget, we normally put an assumption in there that it's going to be a family expenditure for the medical. So it's a very conservative number. That particular cost is just over $2,500 a month.
Okay.
The premium cost for that. So any open position that was budgeted, we would be saving anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 per month on the medical premium.
Okay. And this has got to be it because you just mentioned it. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. This is my last part. Okay. Sorry. Is the budget was basically predicated on their overtime budget of what you will 90%, because the other 10% we had put in a contingency. I think it was 10%. We had to put in a contingency. So this is just their 90% that we're working with, correct?
Correct. Well, what I've done for my projection is I'm assuming that we're going to use all of that overtime contingency.
Oh, okay. So you're basing it on 100% of the overtime.
Correct.
Okay.
At this point in time, as we get closer to the end of the year, we can refine that. But at this point, I normally assume that all of the contingency line items will be spent in their entirety.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience.
You're welcome. So I'm going to go to Councilman Massaro and then Councilwoman O'Connor next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just got to say one thing. Since I've been involved with the city for the last 4 years and before that, when I was chief, I got to say I commend everybody in the city, the mayor, Frank, that we finally got an audit on time. That is the best news I heard since I've been involved with the city, that we don't have to wait 6-7 months down the road for an audit. So I commend you, all of you, for doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
It was entirely my team. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that is completely amazing, Frank. You should definitely pat yourself on the back for that. Councilwoman O'Connor?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just had a question. You had answered my questions, but I wasn't 100% understanding. I know that we had approved and cleared some computer software, hardware problems that we had had last year, but we didn't buy them this year because we don't have an IT head. So how is our infrastructure doing? And I don't even know if you can answer that.
Well, we did bond for certain projects. IT was a part of that. So I know that there was a line item in there for computer replacements. I did actually see a communication from Dell on Friday looking for payment. So I'm assuming that that those computers came in. Obviously, we're not going to pay the bill unless we verify that all the hardware came in. And then I think what I was trying to allude to is we rather than go out and buy everything, we wanted to wait until we had the people that could actually install and do what was needed to do. So we're trying to make sure that we get it done by the end of the year. But I would prefer not to go out and hire outside consultants to try to put them in, because typically they are more expensive on a short-term basis.
Thank you for that. And I do have one more question. I felt that it was very helpful that we had the people from Branford come in to discuss the pension and the benefits package for the police. I want to keep that first and foremost in the front of our heads. So do you have a next step that we can do to bring this forward so that we can keep them protecting and serving us here in West Haven?
Do I?
Yeah, or who would we go to for the next step now? I didn't know if it was a finance deal or...
I don't think it is a finance deal. I mean, we can certainly be involved if there's some analysis needed. But I think that the next steps are probably going to be determined, and I wasn't able to join the Branford session, but I think the next step would be to try to determine if it makes any fiscal sense to do it. Remember, there are going to be gives and takes as you move back and forth between pension and 401k, which has a Social Security component on it. Part of what would have to be done is there would be a cost involved to get the actuary to rework all of the pension contribution calculations with all of the census population, as opposed to just what they have now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and Happy New Year. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Oh, can you not do that? Oh, that was to my dog, and sorry. So I just have a question. I know that so do we know, Mayor Rossi, if Lee has contacted the actuary? I mean, can you just maybe quickly, do you have like a small update regarding the police pension, or do you know next steps? Would you mind? And I know I'm completely putting you on the spot, so.
No, I do know the next steps. The first thing we have to find out is we have to know what it's going to cost. And the way to do that is to get an actuarial study, which I have to contact the actuary. But we had, honestly, all hands on deck to get the audit done and completed and everything done with that. And I am pleased about that. But I do intend on contacting Milliman, because that was one of the things that the finance director said, and I talked about on the phone with him prior to his meeting here. You need to know what the costs are going to be. What are we paying now, and what would we pay then? And that is, so we'll have some sort of actuarial study, and with different, directors, maybe like a 1, 2, and 3 and a comparison. And then it would be better to make, a good decision based on, what the actuary tells us it's going to cost. As far as the audit, Frank's being modest. Frank was very involved in the audit, as was all the finance, and I can't thank them enough. And I also must say that we didn't cave, because what they wanted over Thanksgiving weekend was for me to sign an extension by November the 30th, and I flatly refused. Frank was on the emails. We were all going round and round because I was concerned that we were going to get a back seat, and I didn't want a back seat. I wanted a front seat, and so did Frank, and so did the finance department with an audit on time. So by not signing that, we all worked. It was a real, push, a lot of hours in. Finance did a magnificent job, and we did end up with an audit on time. And one other thing I just want to remind everyone, I appreciate that everyone wants answers to the questions with the department heads. But if you contact a department head, as I've explained in the past, I really would appreciate myself being copied on it and Frank being copied on it. The reason I say that is there's 13 council members. So if everybody starts asking different questions to different people and there's not a group that knows what's getting asked to all the department heads, we're gonna have a lot of overlap and a waste of hours. And we are short-staffed, a lot of it due to COVID. It's very rare now that we don't have some sort of quarantine or isolation going on at City Hall. So if you would just keep us, informed, and that way then we have the set of everybody's questions, so that if there's duplications, obviously we're not going to have the department head answer the question 2 or 3 different times. So I would appreciate that. But Jess, I haven't forgotten about the pension. I agree. It is something that I think we must do in some form. I just don't know what form yet until we get with the actuary and find out. Now, just so that the council knows, and I will bring it back to you, there will be an additional, because the actuary doesn't work for free. So they will give us, I want like an estimate up front. So I want to know what we're paying for. I don't want the surprise bill at the end. And then I will bring that back to all of you, and we'll put it on a future agenda so that we can see where we can get the funding to do a transfer.
No, thank you so much. In regards to the department heads, my thought is that I would ask for the questions again and then send them out as a whole and get them answered, just so that not only that, they might get 2 or 3 inquiries, but even when they get the responses, the information isn't shared across the board. So it would just be beneficial if it's disseminated to everybody.
And Madam Chair, just to clarify, I'm not trying to obfuscate the situation. So if a question comes up on costs, I can identify who we've paid, but I have no visibility into, for example, the highway department, which storms did they work in, and the police department, which events did they have the overtime to, and that's the only reason why I suggest to go to the department heads for that.
No, I appreciate that. I know, Frank. Thank you. Councilwoman O'Connor, I just wanted to make sure that we are all set. You're good?
I'm good with Frank, but I was just curious, have we made any headway with finding a new IT guy? Has anyone applied for the job? Has it been posted? I don't think that's a Frank question. I think that's a mayor question.
That is a mayor question, if I may, Chairwoman. Yes, we are down. I'm not sure if Beth awarded the position, but we did have interest in it, and we are very close to awarding the position. So to answer it, yes, absolutely. We have, and we've hired a couple of other positions as well, risk manager, benefits coordinator. So we are moving along with the initiatives with the vacancies. And I do thank everyone, because we did have a lot of interest. There were times that we put a job up and nobody would apply. So there was interest this time, and quite a few, I might say, for different various jobs and applications. So that was good news, I thought, for West Haven.
No, thank you so much for that update. Are you good, Councilwoman? Okay, no.
I am good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions for the first time before we revisit? Chairman Quagliani.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hosky. Hi, Frank.
Hello, sir.
So, clean water funds. So is that the placeholder location? So we bond, you know, in our capital plan, we bond for sewer treatment capital expenses. So is that the location of in the budget where the sewer fund is for that bonding?
That's actually the debt with the state. They the clean water funds are, I believe it's a 2% interest on any money we borrow from the state related to sewer projects and the clean water fund. That now is being reflected directly in the sewer budget. There was a small piece from a few years ago that is dropping off, I believe, in the next year or so. And you should be able to see that in the budget. I can get you the exact number of what it fell off this year. But now that is directly related to the payments on the monies borrowed from the state itself.
All right, so then we won't typically see that in our side of the house any longer. That'll just be sewer treatment, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And even though we were paying the old clean water fund, there was an operating transfer into the general fund from the sewer fund to effectively cover that cost.
Okay, and I think I asked you, I think this is the question I did submit. So I kind of knew the answer, but I had to ask it anyway. So it's the MARB funding. So, you know, we jump through all sorts of hurdles, right, in order to live to our end of the bargain, that if we do all these things, we're going to get X. And maybe year one, we got X. And then year two, we got maybe 3/4 or 7/8 of X. And then year three, we got less of X. And now I'm kind of concerned for this year. I think we budgeted $4 million. And the better we do, the less money we get. So I think somebody asked a question, what do we look like at the end of the year? So I would imagine that answer was inclusive of that $4 million MARB money based on your estimate at year end.
That's correct. That's correct. We're assuming to get the full amount. However, if we do end up with a surplus, I would expect the MARB to hold back on that.
Yeah, and I know you've tried. Listen, I know that at the end of the day, and listen, I appreciate the MARB's assistance and the monies that they've allowed the city to utilize to get themselves, you know, out of the hole these last several years. But boy, you know, I could think of, as you all have tried, you know, many infrastructure projects, you know, capital projects where, you know, we could put that money towards. But I know that we've tried and we've come up empty, but maybe we could try again.
We'll keep trying every year.
So I think that was like 1.5 questions, Chairwoman. My only other question I have of Frank is, Frank, do you have any update on the ADP project?
The ADP project? Yes. We are still scheduled for a February go live. All of the internal clocks have been received. We are in the process of having them installed and getting the biometrics set for that. There are daily update calls with ADP and the heavy lift from that is coming from Doug Davis on the city side and Aaron Sweeney on the Board of Education side, as well as a temporary employee that we hired to help out with that position. They have been going through all of the data. They are still going through the data. We are trying to get the final answers to them on some of the questions that they have. But we've been finding some things as they take the data and run it through their system and come up with different answers. We've been determining whether it's an issue on their side or if it's an issue on our side. So we are still projecting a February go live. I think we have a call this Wednesday afternoon. We've been having weekly calls at the executive level with the mayor and myself, ADP and Neil, along with a couple of others, And I believe either this week or next week, we'll make the call again as to whether we need to delay or not. But my hope is that we will go live and the first payroll from ADP will be mid-February.
Yeah, and I know it's a huge project, and just to make sure that the data integrity is in place before you go live is huge. So I appreciate that update, and I hope all goes well for you in February.
Thank you.
All set, Councilwoman. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I have a few questions, Frank. And unfortunately, I'm laughing at myself because you answered one of my questions and you were like, well, this is revenue and not expenses. I have no idea what I was doing. As you can see, that night when I sent you the questions, it was a little bit later, and I had completely turned myself inside out with that question. But let me ask it again so that we can both understand what I was talking about. So my question is regarding the fire department in Allentown, the miscellaneous revenue, not expenses. My concern is, I don't have a concern. That's a wrong word. So my curiosity, because I'm a very curious person. You ask my mother, she'll tell you, I always asked why. When I look at this, right, I look at donations, line 47600, and that donation, I'm assuming might be UNH. We got donated $100,000. So we got all of that, and the percent used, 100,000. And then the next line, it says miscellaneous, which is probably wherever we get other donations. We budgeted for $1,600, we got over $4,000. So that percent used made it 255%, which is great. So if you look at the bottom, the percent is like at 58, but in all actuality, it's those two things that kind of skew it, because the miscellaneous fees, the police, fire department, extra DUT, I don't know what that stands for, duty maybe, when people pay us for them to be on duty. And then the fire department bundle, those are all under. Those are well under where I would think we would need to be at 5 months in. That's what I was trying to ask. That's what I didn't ask. And that is what I'm asking now. Are we concerned about that? Are we concerned that all of them are under 20% in collection?
I don't think so. I think, and I'd have to go back, and I'm trying to find the file, but I have a file that has the last 5 years for each individual line on the revenue side.
Okay.
That will tell us, by line item where the skewing normally happens. So there could be a line that, through 5 months, typically it may only be at 10% of the year, because it all comes in May or June,
okay,
in the nice months. But I can certainly go back and look at that. We use the same type of algorithm on the revenue side for Allentown that I do on the city side. So at this point, I'm not hugely concerned. But I look at it every single month when the actuals come out. We run it through the model again and update it and refine the forecast going forward.
No, and that, right. So now does my question make sense? That's what I was trying to ask you. So I appreciate that. So I just saw that, and usually, that's where I go. I go all the way to the end. And when we're, that's where I look to see if I think that we have any concerns. Can I ask you one more question? The grants for Allentown, and you did answer it, but I'm not sure I understand. So the pilot grant, we budgeted for 56,000. We got almost 30,000.
Yeah.
Why? are we not getting all of it, or do we get paid in 2 installments? Like,
Yeah, it comes in pieces.
okay.
It's similar to the ECS grant that comes from the state. So it's similar to the ECS grant where they break throughout the year.
Right. Okay. I was just making sure. And the $60,000, on top of that, the MRSA is.
That is.
We had.
Yep, that's the monies that Mike DeMassa got.
Right. Okay. And that's that 60. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, in case anyone else was curious, that they realized like what exactly that was. And then I did ask you, so that makes sense. So I guess part of what I don't realize is that some of their wages, the chief is probably paid out of under the an admin portion of the budget under regular wages.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I thought that, I think me and Councilwoman Hamilton were discussing that. We just wanted to be sure that that's what we thought, because it was only like 22% paid for almost 6 months. It just seemed weird.
I think there are a couple open positions still in Allentown. And the chief did just get hired last month, I believe. So the budget would have had him in for the entire year. So he had 4 months of savings there, which is artificially reducing the percentage during the year.
Right. I have a 1.2 question. 2.5. So the chief is paid out of that admin, right?
That's correct.
Is the assistant chief paid out of that as well?
No, he's paid out of operations.
I just look at regular wages and $281,000. That's a lot for a chief and an administrative assistant.
I'll double check it, but I believe that the deputy chief is paid out of operations. I can double check that for you.
Yeah, it's more of my curiosity, because when I look, I'm like, wow, 281,000. I mean, maybe we've given the chief a raise, but I haven't heard anything happening. Nobody's marched on City Hall yet, so I'm thinking that can't be the case. So I was just curious, but I'm going to stop talking now. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions? Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Frank, I know you answered this question, but I just need some clarity. You know, I was referring to the bonding, you know, the $800,000 that we bonded for this current year, you know, at the low interest rate to be able to, you know, do our paving, road improvements, et cetera. But the other 3 years prior to that, that the city paid for, if you will, but now we're asking for reimbursement of that, okay? At some point, we're going to get it, or we haven't gotten it, whatever. We're asking for altogether to be $3.4 million. So what I'm worrying about is I understand like this $800,000 for this fiscal year that we're bonding for it, requested bonding for it. But the other 3 years, if we've already, and I'm just trying to understand this, if we've already spent the money in prior years and now we get reimbursed for it, wouldn't that be revenue for us because we're kind of paying ourselves back because those were prior year's budgets? I'm just trying to understand it. That's all.
Show as income in the capital fund. You'd never see it in revenue in the general fund.
Okay, revenue in the cap, but at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, just at the end of the day, it is revenue. So, and I'm asking.
Well, the account is called revenue. It's actually an influx of cash, if you will.
Right.
So we went out and borrowed the money. That was all part of the October bond. Right. And so now those particular projects in the past 3 years that have been in deficit are no longer in deficit because we have the funds through this bond now.
Okay, so now, because the reason why I'm saying is because we were in deficit, that answers it. But just so I'm clear, is I always consider like the general fund, call it the rainy day fund, if you will. It's a good thing, you know, it's a good thing that we have it. But if indeed we weren't in deficit and we asked for that money back for those other 3 years, would that capital revenue also be, would that have been able to then be put into the general fund because we're just trying to pay ourselves back, or
No.
was just, okay.
The state would, I mean, that money doesn't come from the state. That money only comes from borrowing.
I'm sorry, borrowing, I didn't mean
Yep,
that.
it would only come from borrowing, and we cannot bond any funds to pay operating costs.
Okay, no, I just didn't, I got the two of them mixed up on the sheet. You know, we're talking about revenue, that's all. So that's not, you guys are like, we're not part of the general fund. We were in a deficit situation. We're paying ourselves back. All a wonderful thing. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Rossi?
There's one other thing that I just wanted to piggyback on with the question about the MARB money. One thing I don't know, who knows, because I know some of you are on some of the meetings, whether we liked it or not, the city picked up its own IBNR when they've like taken it away from us, if you will. Frank could probably explain it better, but when we first engaged with them and we talked about, you know, switching insurance plans, the IBNR, which is incurred but not recorded, was supposed to be at least assisted to or paid for by MARB funding, and unfortunately the city ended up paying it. And now the Board of Ed is embarking on the same venture, my understanding is, to go to the Connecticut Partnership. They too have an IBNR, and I'm not quite sure, I don't know if Frank knows offhand, but we could find out what their IBNR is. And I'm concerned, I don't know who's expected to pay for that. So it's unfortunate because that would have increased our general fund balance, is what I'm trying to say. And I know that even in the minutes, it must be reflected because it was repeatedly told to us by two administrations of the MARB board, I don't know any other better way of putting it, that we would at least be assisted with it. And as far as I know, and Frank, please jump in, but as far as I know, we didn't get $1 towards it. They just took it away and said, oh yeah, your IBNR is paid.
Yeah, that's correct. We haven't seen any reimbursement from the state for that, even though it was communicated.
Did they say why? Like, what was their reasoning?
Haven't gotten an answer yet.
No good answer other than, well, your IBNR is paid now. That's the answer.
I think the argument goes back to the same reason that they withhold some of the money from the funding, is they look at where the city's general fund balance is compared to the original 5-year plan that was put together. And that's where they target to and say, okay, you only need 3 million instead of 5 million to get you to that original number. And that includes all of the cost for the IBNR. So, you know, good for us, good for the state.
Good for us, yeah.
Yeah.
We were able to pay our bill.
Bad for
It's something to be proud of.
Yeah. So I'm actually, I'm not, well, I'll say I'm not looking forward to, but on Thursday we have a meeting with the full MARB, and there was money withheld from the city because I was projecting $1 million surplus, so they held back a little less than $1 million, where we ended up with a surplus anyway, even though they held that money back. So I'm expecting a conversation. I haven't had that from them yet because they just received the budget. But I don't know what that impact is going to have on fiscal 2021.
Well, still good job. Councilwoman Hamilton, I see you.
I just want to be unclear on the information that that you just gave us. First of all, good job, Frank and the mayor. We're moving forward and getting out of all this debt. IBNR, would that be the money that that we owed, like Blue Cross, that we owed them, and now that we're withdrawing from them, there's still a balance out there that we had to pay to just kind of clear our debt?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So it's incurred but not reported. So it would be, for example, you go to the doctor and you submit the claim or the doctor submits the claim, it doesn't get paid right away. The insurance company may bounce it back, have some questions, but that claim is still owed to the doctors. And when the city was self-insured, what would end up happening is that money would just be drawn out of our account to pay those bills. So as you would expect, those numbers have decreased significantly as those claims bleed off. We still see some every month, but it is getting smaller and smaller, and eventually it will just disappear.
Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Frank? Well, with that said, your finance committee is closed at 8:06.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Unfinished business, we have none. We'll now convene as the council for committee reports. If the clerk could read communication A into the record.
We have communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of December 2020, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you, Stacy. And just a reminder, so if anybody wanted to see the detail on that particular communication or any other communications going forward, the council is now putting the council packet online for the public to be able to see. That started this meeting and will continue to go forward. If someone would like to see a communication that does not have internet access, they could continue to call the council office. That has been the procedure, and ask for that particular communication. Adoption of ordinances previously presented. There are none. Council liaison reports. Councilman Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to just give the council an update on a couple of things that I spoke to the police department about. One of them is the two officers that were involved in the incident on Campbell Avenue. One of them is going to make a full recovery. The other officer is waiting to see an ankle specialist on seeing a specialist on the ankle when he was run over. There were 3 juveniles. 2 were caught. 1 is still being looked for at this time. The court will decide if they'll go before juvenile court or if they'll go before adult court. Our police department has looked into, so this wouldn't happen again. They're exploring options on devices that will disable the police car if the scenario were to ever reoccur. So they're looking into how to prevent this from possibly happening again. With that being said, the incident on Campbell Avenue a year ago Friday, I talked to the West Haven Police Department. I also talked to the state police, and they said I was told by both that the state's attorney's office is handling the incident on Campbell Avenue. The West Haven Police and the state police have no involvement with the investigation, that the state attorney is handling it, and they couldn't give me an update on when we could have an answer on that, being Friday, as we all know, would be a year. Let's see. The PD, we already touched base on this a couple of times tonight. The PD is requesting another meeting as a follow-up for their pension. They're looking to find out what's going on with that, and they were looking for a meeting for a follow-up. We already all touched on that a little bit tonight. And I believe that's all I have tonight from the PD. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bruno. Is there any other council liaison reports? Seeing none. New business? Councilwoman McGee.
I just want to mention a longtime West Haven City resident. Her name was Alice Fentress. She passed away this past weekend. She was an educator for over 30 years. And if you head over to her Facebook page, you'll see students who were educated by her who have dedicated their career and community services to her. And I want to share that one of the last conversations I had with Alice was December 1st, and it was regarding the resolution. She taught civil awareness. She taught true history, and encouraged young people to be unapologetic in their identities. And I mean, her students range from nurses and daycare providers to lawyers. And I just wanted to shout her out because I think it's amazing that one of the things that she was able to hear about was the resolution, having dedicated so much of her life to that work in the same city that you know, she sort of gave her life to. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that to us. Is there any other new business? Councilwoman Hamilton.
I just want to remind folks, if you know anybody that's been married for over 50 years, the mayor's office is asking that you call them because they have a tradition, I guess, for the last 31 years of celebrating near Valentine's Day. Since there's COVID, they will do drop-offs to the couple's houses on Friday the 12th. So if you know any of those people, tell them to write a book and to call the mayor's office so they can get their care package. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hamilton. Is there any other new business? Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the mayor on the line right now? Is the mayor here? No? Okay. Only because I've been asked this from a few constituents, few senior constituents, and I just wanted, just so people know, Connecticut Phase 1B, I guess it is, of the coronavirus vaccine will officially start on January 18th for residents over the age of 75. Registration for appointments will begin Thursday. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but I will tell you, I'm sure if the health department would give more information, but January 18th is when people over the age of 75 can get coronavirus vaccines. Also, what I also read separately onto that, the governor of Lamont authorized vaccines for people over the age of 75 beginning today for open appointments that would otherwise go unfilled. You know, we hear in the news about wasted, you know, people don't show up for their vaccinations and they want to use them and so forth. So again, frontline essential workers will begin vaccinations later this week. Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is appropriate, but you know, I know I had read, you know, I guess over the break, around the Christmas break and prior to that, I saw some information. I'm talking about preparedness plans for New Haven, Orange, Milford. They've been communicating some plans and protocols, and I'm sure that we in West Haven are going to follow whatever the state says. But I was wondering perhaps if Mayor Rossi or maybe a member for administration, I'm not sure who that would be, if that would be Dr. Lillis or otherwise, could give us some update next time. Maybe it'll already be out by our next meeting. I don't know, but an update on our West Haven preparedness plans. You know, if we put in anything in place regarding distribution and administration of the coronavirus vaccine in West Haven. I know other towns, they're all pretty similar. I wouldn't expect any surprises. But also, you know, if the plans may or may not include the Savin Rock community properties, which I know are HUD run, it might be very valuable if there was some information, you know, provided to West Haven residents, unless of course we're just going by the state. So it's something to consider, Mr. Chair, if maybe we might want to ask or get an update on that for West Haven. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. I could definitely extend the invitation. I do know that the local health department is standing up their own vaccination clinic on the City Hall property, and hopefully should be stood up in a couple of weeks. But I will extend that invitation to the health director to see if she would like to attend our next meeting and give us a little update and get a little Q&A. Any other new business? Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Councilwoman Hosky, seconded by Councilwoman O'Connor. And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good rest of the evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.